Okay, it seems we're live.
Great. I'm just pulling up some files and then we'll be ready to go in, let's say, a minute and a half.
Um, I have forgotten something, and I will be just a moment. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, we got it all done while you were gone.
All right, so let's get started and call to order. I'll start by sharing my screen with our agenda. We'll call to order at 4:34. And we'll begin with our land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge with respect that we are in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. The land on which we're gathered is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe and known as Baoting. And Baoting is home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Next, I'd like an adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Could I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Larry, seconded by Lee. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please indicate your agreement. And the motion carries. Next, we have declarations of pecuniary interest. So we had a couple declarations come in on some of the items. So we had Nyla Moss was noted for application number 3, Sioux Blues Society, and Lee Rendell for application number 6 with the Club Community Center. Are there any additional declarations of pecuniary interest for the 6 items that we're going to cover this day?
Sean, I asked if I could step out of the adjudication of these applications altogether because Thinking Rock's got an application in.
Oh, great. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And let's see, in terms of quorum, is it best that we put you in a room or are we? I'm deferring to Alicia here, but you're very small on my screen. So I
I'm
just,
having the same problem here. I'm so sorry. We need 6 total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have lost count because everything moved. I believe we have 6 members here.
okay.
So I believe we can let Miranda go unless anybody else is planning to leave early. Okay, I think we can say goodbye to Miranda. That's okay.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Miranda. Great. Um, so thank you all very much for your time and attention on these applications. Any other declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Seeing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. So could I have a mover for the agenda? Moved by Brenna, seconded by Nyla. Thank you both very much. It's open for discussion if there's any motion to amend the agenda in any way or any additions. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand or indicate in some other way. Great, motion carries. Next, we're going into business arising. So the purpose of this meeting is to begin the process of adjudicating the Arts and Culture Assistance Program applications for our late intake. I know this is the first meeting for 3 of our members. Actually, if you'll permit me to tweak the agenda a little bit here, I'd also like to express a welcome to Rebecca Evans because I believe this is your first meeting. Is that correct?
That's true. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I'm new to this committee and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am a clinical social worker and currently working in the field of applied behavior analysis with the goal of becoming a board certified behavior analyst probably within the next year. I work for a company based in Traverse City, Michigan. So I live in Canada, but I work in the States. And I previously served on the Community Development Award Committee. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's wonderful to have you. And thank you for all your effort here. I know that for 3 of you, this will be your first round of adjudicating these applications. So I wanted to provide a little bit of context. I'll try to be brief. But the process that we have used thus far has been modeled somewhat on processes that are used by Ontario Arts Council, with the caveat that we are also bound by limitations. Well, maybe let's say bound by the regulations of the Municipal Act of Ontario. And so our deliberations as a result need to be public, which is why we are broadcasted live. So that's a bit different from if you've participated in, say, Ontario Arts Council or Canada Council adjudication processes. Usually those are not public, though the results are public. But this is in keeping with the regulations of the Ontario Municipal Act. There isn't the process that we have isn't something that's laid down in stone in any kind of legislation. It's something that's developed over the course of several years of trying to adapt our practice of balancing clear public disclosure with fair assessment and a juried process where peers are able to assess the applications that come in to the best of our ability on their merit. And we advance those recommendations to council. So ultimately, we don't, though we set the recommendation that goes to council, it's council that has the final decision on any awards that are made. We are largely advisory in this role. We haven't had council previously change any recommendations, but they do have the authority to do so. The other thing that I'd emphasize with our deliberation process, what we've done so far, and this isn't to say that it's the way that things will always be done. We always try to have some reflection on this process after each iteration. But generally, to move things along, myself as chair will provide a little bit of a description of each application. Then we'll open the floor for discussion, and we'll go to each single member to provide any additional comment or reactions on the application. When you are doing so, please bear in mind that all applicants, whether you believe the application to be strong or weak or whatever the case may be, they've put a lot of time and effort into these applications. And so we endeavor to be respectful and gracious with our assessments. and with the language that we use in as much as it is also hard to judge these things against one another, especially when we have very, very limited funds to distribute. So bear that in mind. Also that the the fairness of our assessment is of the utmost importance. So please refrain from any speculation about intent or basically anything that's not very explicit in the applications, right? If there is a lack of clarity or a question, rather than speculate, we encourage you to say that this is an area where I'm not clear, I'm not sure what this is about, or I need some clarity on this. We can, especially the way that we've cut up the adjudication process this year, we can ask Alicia to go back to applicants and seek clarification, rather than speculate on what an answer might or might not be. So that's just something to bear in mind. That staff support is there. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Alicia for the amount of work that goes into preparing these applications for review, and also for preparing my own speaking notes for today as well. So thank you very much, Alicia. So for the committee members, know that Alicia is here to support our work as well. So if we do have questions, we can defer to her on that and get information at subsequent meetings. Is there anything that you would add, Alicia?
No, I think that covers it, and thank you very much.
Larry?
Yeah, just your comment about our proceedings are public. I think it goes on Facebook. Is that what happens?
YouTube.
YouTube, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What's the viewership? Have you any idea? I've never asked that before.
Yeah, as a side note, there's a counter at the bottom, and it counts the number of views. And I'll say that it's often me going back and refining my notes. So it could be any number of people really, but yes, ultimately it can range anywhere between legitimately 1 or 0 to a couple of hundred, but I don't think we're typically that high.
Yeah. I've had 2 people tell me that they occasionally watch it.
I was just curious as to how many people are watching.
Yeah. And I think it might vary, Brenna.
So you're just saying if something arises that we're curious about in terms of fairness or making sure that everything's like copacetic, we direct it to Alicia?
That's right. I mean, you can raise the question in open session, absolutely. Just we just direct it to Alicia to seek clarification. Yeah. Larry?
I have another question, and I'm going to ask it now so I don't forget it.
No worries.
I don't think it has anything to do with the 6 applications we're looking at today. But if an applicant was given an award, a grant at the last round, can they get a second one now in the new round? So they get 2 grants in a year?
I don't think within the same year. I'm going to defer to Alicia on this because I saw her hand.
I can answer that. So just to be clear, applicants are welcome to apply within the same year, as long as they haven't been awarded the previous session. So, for example, if Sioux Film Festival had applied in early intake and they had received money, they would not be eligible this time at this moment, but they will be eligible come the next intake, so early intake of next year, technically speaking. At this time, there are no conflicts of that sort on this list. There are a couple of not even resubmissions. A couple people have submitted applications again this round, and some of them have fine-tuned their projects or changed them entirely. So we're not in a position we're not really looking at the same applications for the most part again.
Lee?
So
my question was regarding, I saw in the application amount, it was quite large overall. And of course, we have a number of applications that we're reviewing. And my question was, is it an all or nothing, or can we award a portion to deserving applicants, or is it that all or nothing, I guess?
That's a great question. And Larry, I'm going to come to you for your follow-up question after I answer this. So the answer is yes, we can award a smaller amount. Typically what happens is it's incredibly rare for an applicant to actually get the full amount that they have requested, unfortunately, and it's due to limited resources. And thank you for raising this because I completely left off the last half of what this process looks like, which is that once we've discussed each application, members have the opportunity to change your scores if you so choose, because part of the peer review process is that we learn from each other's perspectives. And that's why it's important to do. So that we don't have to have the same scores. That's not the goal. We average out the scores, but so that we at least have shared understandings of the applications that are before us when making our scores. And then at the very end, once all of the applications that have been received in this intake have been assessed and scored, we have used an approach of, first of all, having a minimum 60% threshold. So an application must receive basically a score of at least 60% out of the total 15 that they could acquire. So in this case, that would be a score of at least 9. To be considered. Or an average of 9, right? You can have an individual or a few individuals who have scored lower than that, but so long as the average is above 9, it's at least in that minimum threshold for discussion. And then the amounts that are requested, we adjust proportionally based on their score. So let's say they received an average score of 11 out of 15. That would be 73%. So if they asked for $5,000, then the awarded amount would be $3,667, basically. That's our starting point. And usually we still don't even have enough money to do that. So then it becomes a more challenging discussion of, do we raise the threshold or the minimum threshold, which has been what we've mostly done in the past, or do we decrease proportionally? And often we've sort of mixed these approaches. Brenna?
Right, and then we have categories.
Yes.
Right. So that makes it that much more complicated, because sometimes the emerging projects might need a larger amount funded than, because they're at, 29 or whatever. So fully funding one of those. And yeah, so that's where I find I get kind of complicated, is because then they get split into categories and And
thanks for reminding me of that too, because basically once we get to that phase, we don't have a lot of precedent to run off of, and it gets trickier and trickier partly because of the success of the program. More people are applying, we're doing a better job of supporting applicants, but then our pot hasn't increased in the last 2 years, I think. So it's already not a lot of money. And so last intake, I think what we did was those smaller projects that are only eligible for up to $5,000, we decided not to reduce those. We did at the same proportion that we were reducing the higher requested amounts. But those come down to, group conversations about how do we want to proceed from that point. And so we can take in those different factors of the size of the of the requests coming in, what's still feasible. If somebody's asked for $5,000 and we've whittled them down to 900, and is that still reasonable? And so those are all sorts of debates that not debates in the sense, not like we're finger pointing or anything, but they're lively discussions. And it's definitely the hardest part. I was going to say something else, but it's lost on me, so I'm going to go back to Larry because I know you had a follow-up. Yeah.
Yeah, just on the same point I was asking about. I'm not sure whether the answer was that if a group has received, say, funding the last go around, they asked for A, and now they're asking for B in this second go around. Can they get a grant for that?
Not if they've already been awarded for A, so if they've received money from this pot this year, then that's it.
Okay, that's what I was because it doesn't seem fair.
No.
And
Especially yeah.
Alicia, were you saying that we don't face that problem with any of the applications? These are a lot of familiar names, but
Yes.
I don't keep track in my head what we considered last time.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, definitely none of these were funded last time. There are a couple of repeat applicants, but most have changed their projects or provided more information for consideration for this go around. Something that of relevance I'll just bring up right now as well is we're starting to collect a bit of a trove of data regarding the last goes around and essentially the amounts people were given and for what types of grants. And so I'm hoping to be able to translate that into something that we can see more measurably moving forward as well. I'm not sure if that'll be something that we do want to look at over time if we're looking at legacy projects, and again for groups that request operations over time or what have you, how that changes, what the amounts look like. But that's something we can talk about in a future time because we are starting to collect that information just by value of having a program.
Thanks, Alicia. That's great. Lee.
I just had a follow-up clarity question to Larry's. So the projects, if they haven't already received funding, cannot receive duplicate funding for the second round. What about the applicants themselves? Say applicant A had project X that was awarded funding. Can applicant A now submit project Z and also receive funding?
Sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
I was going to say, there's a bit of a technicality there in that just because there's so much crossover between groups and individuals who are consistently working within the arts and culture sector in the community, that some names do come up time and again, but it's typically not primary applicants that are pushing those projects forward. So typically if somebody has a small project grant they've applied for in the last round that they have applied for, they won't then be eligible in this round to apply for a different project. But again, if they have a personal project that they've applied for and they've had approved in the first round, in the second round, perhaps if they're working with, just looking at the list here, if they're working with the Sioux Theater Workshop, for example, as a board member, technically they're affiliated, but that's not their project, it's the organization's project, so it's different.
Thanks for that, Alicia. Yeah, and similarly, like, say somebody's band applied for support for doing a recording, but they might have an individual artist within that band who is applying for, a solo exhibition assistance or something like that, right? So those would be considered different. But and likewise with the board situation, I mean, we see a lot of repeat names on different boards. That's just the nature of a small city. But yes, say an individual was, say, applying for their individual creative work in the early intake, and then had a different project with a different practice, I don't think that that individual would be eligible to receive funding from both intakes. The other thing that I wanted to highlight before we dive in here, I'm going to share a different screen now that we're on to the hopefully this is the right, okay, great. Too many screens. This is a summary of the application. So we have some of the we have the average scores thus far. These will change also because we have another set of scores that are coming in. But this is the average to date. This number is not, extra important for today's discussion, apart from ensuring that they all meet that threshold of a minimum of 9 out of 15. And so all of our 6 applications for discussion today do exceed that. The thing that I wanted to highlight was also that there is sometimes, well, I think it's pretty much been every single intake that we've had. There's at least 1 or 2 applications that have a little bit of a discrepancy between the amount that they've submitted as their requested amount versus the maximum that they're actually allowed to request. So in this case, we have 1 application that has requested $10,000. We're not considering the full 10,000 because under the application, they're only eligible for 4,999. So we're basing that assessment out of that eligible amount of the 4,999. So thank you also to Alicia for having calculated all this in advance. So I'm going to stop my screen share there. I have those resources available to share if anybody wants to see them again during our deliberations. But if there aren't any other questions, we can dive into item number 1. Okay, so application number 1 is from the Sioux Film Festival for a major cultural celebration with a requested amount of $10,000 of support for which they are eligible. This application details the 5th anniversary season for the Sioux Film Festival with signature events taking place August 7th and 21st as Sioux Film Festival in the Park and Sioux Film Festival event dates of November 29th to December 1st, 2024. Events will be at the Grand Theater, and partnerships have been developed that include the Queen of Hearts Club on Dennis Street. The applicant is excited to add a gala event as a kickoff immediately before the Sioux Film Festival in response to feedback. This event will welcome creators, sponsors, and the public to enjoy a special evening together with an exciting preview of Sioux Film Festival's 5th anniversary. Creating a wonderful bookend event, they will also be closing with a larger event featuring the Sioux Film Festival award presentations. Sioux Film Festival is continuing the legacy as well of the former Shadows of the Mind Film Festival and will host a Sioux Film Fest in the Park at Bellevue Park this summer. These events are not only free of charge for the community, they are also opportunities to create more engagement and awareness of Sioux Film Festival and the Northern film industry. They're currently wrapping up a public campaign where people can suggest films and are now beginning a fun sports-style bracketed voting process. In addition to the traditional family-friendly feature presented, they are also adding a short film from a Northern creator as a preview at each Sioux Film Fest in the Park event. The 5th anniversary will continue to offer a range of workshops, allowing local attendees access to learning opportunities that would not otherwise be available. Dovetailing this, they'll continue to build connections with local artists and creators, including the theater community, to develop more human infrastructure and local opportunities for folks working in film. So floor is open for discussion. What I'm going to do is typically I alternate around the screen. So I'll start with Brenna, then Nyla, then Larry, then Rebecca, then Lee. And then in our next item, I'll go in reverse order and we'll alternate like that. Brenna.
Okay, so I thought this was an awesome application. Anniversary season, the network of independent filmmakers. I'd like that they outlined where the ACAP funding would be going to. So aside from the grant, it's a graphic designer, a tech person, a workshop guest, an editor. So a lot of these funds are going right back into our community. So I really like that aspect about the project, and it's fairly detailed. So I thought it was great.
Thanks, Brenna. Nyla, any comments?
Yeah, and they match really closely. I really appreciated that they wanted to pay people for the work that they were doing and that they have that as part of their plan. Not like, I mean, volunteers, and I rely on volunteers every day, but it was nice that they wanted to kind of give people an opportunity to get paid for the work that sometimes it's hard to get paid for creative work in a small community. And I also like that they were leveraging the fact that it's an anniversary, because I think that's an opportunity to get people who maybe hadn't seen it in the past to have that kind of messaging behind it. This is their 5th year anniversary. And I really appreciate the risk, the extra work they've taken on taking over like the Bellevue Park shows and incorporating that and having that as being a step this year to make it more of a full calendar of events. And so I also found this to be a strong application and very detailed in their budget.
Thanks, Nyla. Larry, any questions or comments?
I just echo that I thought it was a very well written and balanced application. I think I think they're picking up shadows of where Shadows of the Mind has left us now, which is encouraging. Plug that hole. And I understand that the International Film Festival is still going on, but it's getting the organizers are getting a bit tired. We all are subject to aging, unfortunately. So I think it's really worth encouraging this group. And I really enjoyed how they approached the pillars of addressing the cultural pillars and the impact on the community. It was very thoughtful. And I did notice that they've made application to NOHFC, the Ontario Arts Council. They said Canada Arts Council, but I wondered if they meant Heritage Canada. Anyway, I thought their budgets were in order and it was a good application.
Thanks, Larry. Rebecca?
Hey, thanks. I agreed with the others. I assigned a 5 in each of the categories of this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Lee?
Yeah, not to echo everyone else, but I was really impressed. It was kind of not dismayed, but because it was the first application I'd ever looked at, I was like, "Whoa, this is gonna be a tough one to beat." I thought the impact in the arts and culture locally was huge, right? You have viewership, you have education, you have employment, you have artist engagement. It was really, really robust. I love that they're continuing the legacy of Shadow of the Minds. I'm viewing this as like a wonderful new take to continue that film industry in the community. I really appreciated that their marketing plan and how they're promoting everything, as well as their diverse funding sources. I thought it was really complete. And then I looked into kind of the history and the letters from the board members and the people that are leading this project. And I just think they have a great team that can definitely pull it off as well. So overall, like out of the park.
Thanks very much.
No, in the park.
Yeah.
I understand that they may have been given Shadow of the Minds some of their equipment.
And that was my understanding from the reference to the shadows in the park. I think that's the piece that they've taken over. So any based on this, it sounds like everybody's in vigorous agreement. I don't expect, well, I shouldn't say that. You have the opportunity now or later to adjust your scores if the discussion has changed your consideration in any way. If that's your intent, please let me know now, or you can signal so at a later time as well. Otherwise, we'll move on to item number 2, which was the Black Fly Jam. Black Fly Jam has applied for a community events grant, requesting an amount of $10,000 for which they're eligible for $4,999. So that's the amount that we'll be considering. Black Flag Jam is a not-for-profit community events organization presenting professional touring alternatives and acoustic original live music concerts and performing arts for audiences in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Their mandate is to provide the community with world-class contemporary arts within an intimate and convivial listening atmosphere. And to that ability, they also provide an equally reciprocal arrangement for independent original performers. Audience comfort is important to Black Fly Jam. Events are licensed, sometimes catered, and social time is provided at intermissions as well as before and after the shows. Their goal includes facilitating learning and educational opportunities, encouraging performers to offer school presentations when applicable, or workshops for other interested professional creators. Student and local amateur musicians are often featured for a short set before the main act. And they also look for opportunities to co-present with other like-minded community groups to expand their abilities, as well as with not-for-profit organizations where they benefit in raising awareness and funds for their projects. The group is looking to expand on these goals to continue to build community and opportunities. Activities are anticipated to take place September 1st, 2024 to May 1st, 2025, mostly at the Loft at the Algoma Conservatory of Music. The group does not present in December or the months of May to August. Applicants have selected age demographics that include 0 to 75 plus years of age and have indicated that events typically draw 100 to 250 people per event, utilizing about 10 participants to facilitate the operations of these events. The group is planning for a season of 7 events this year. Now we'll go in reverse order. Lee, would you like to start us off?
Yes. Qualitatively, I thought the application was fairly decent, especially in terms of our artistic and or cultural merit. However, I was wondering about the financials. I found them very unclear in the application itself. I was really glad that they included audited budget statements at the end, which did provide some clarity. And unfortunately, with that clarity, also came an unclear financial need because the financials seem to indicate like a fairly profitable model that was already in existence. So that's what I struggled with personally finding from this application. Overall, I thought it was great. It seemed like they do amazing work. I love the artists they're bringing in. I think they have great merit. The attendance seems to be pretty good by the ticket sales, but I was really digging for it and I just couldn't find it. And if anyone else in the committee could provide clarity, like if they found it when they were looking through the application, I would love to hear that.
Thanks, Lee. Rebecca?
So, like I'm sure the others, like I do have a lot of respect for what this organization does in the community, and it did seem, based on the documents provided, that their shows are well attended and that they're doing a strong service to the community in terms of providing musical performances. This particular application, I found overall that it was rather vague. I wasn't entirely sure what their honestly what the objectives were of the funding. I did see ideas of expansion into schools and workshops, but there weren't any financial specifics provided for this. They mentioned that their goal is to partner with schools, but there weren't any specifics for that. There was mention of expanding technology in the Loft, but I wasn't sure what their connection would be to this specifically. So in terms of scoring, this was one of my applications where it was below 5s in each category. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rebecca. No problem. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Larry?
Yeah, I thought this was again a well put together application by a very mature group. They've been around for a while. They've got their program thought out. I did think about they're about $11,000 in the black right now, according to their financial statement. But you know, that's not a lot of money when you're taking on risks like they are. And I don't think I would penalize them for being good managers. I mean, if it were $1 million in the black, I might think differently, or that's too extreme. But you know, they're respectably in the black, and I think they present a number of events, and we're being asked to support their general operations in putting those events on. I thought it was pretty diverse. They've got the ones at the Loft, the shows that they put on there, but they also do others. The Rotary Fest, for example, that's a big undertaking. I think they said they have 8 or 9 musicians that I think they must take over an evening. I'm not sure about that, but it struck me as quite a bit that they chewed off. With respect, and they do local musicians in addition to out-of-towners, either presenting. No, this was how I interpreted the application. Either presenting concerts by local musicians, an entire concert, or being an opener for somebody coming from out of town. The connection to the Loft for recording and so on, you've got Greg Norrie with his setup there. And a lot of these groups and musicians are trying to be supportive of having a source for recording what they do. So fair enough. So I thought, all in all, this was a pretty good application.
Thanks, Larry. Just to clarify, though, this group wasn't the one connected to Rotary Fest. This is that's the Sioux Blues Society. But
I'm sorry. Yes,
that's okay.
they just read the wrong one.
No problem. I mean, there's a lot of crossover for sure. So, I wasn't sure if I just wanted to check in if that was your comments for.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I got the wrong one.
Oh, no worries, please.
But they provide school workshops and educational workshops, and you know, they've been going for 35 years, so they're pretty mature. 7 or 8 events a year. And they have never had a prior grant from us.
Great. Thanks so much, Larry. Next, oh, I adjusted my, oh wait, there we go. Okay, next we have Nyla. Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed reading this application. I thought they painted a really clear picture of the atmosphere that they offer, referencing how comfortable it is and how intimate it is. And that was really clear in their application. I agree with some of the comments about some parts just resulting in more questions. For me, it came down to the project plan template. And I know that they had a lot of things to touch on because they have so many performances. And hopefully I'm just not reading this incorrectly, because maybe this is a really like appropriate and typical way to use this part of the application. They list all their performances, which definitely fits under milestones and activity. I guess I wish I had seen more about what each one looks like. Starting marketing for one, you going to schools to promote any in class. So I know the schedule, which is already kind of laid out elsewhere with the months that they perform and the months that they don't. And I think because I did rate them compared just like in general and compared to how I ranked other ones. But when it came to the parts of the rubric where it talked about dedicating a certain amount of time, the clarity of like the phases of the projects were just the ones where I felt it fell a little bit behind because I didn't know how they were approaching each performance as far as the planning and marketing. And maybe that just comes down to, as Larry said, they're very established. So they obviously have something that they're doing and it is working. And we could see that from their financial statements. But I think I was just looking for a little bit more information there, specifically in how this funding would be applied in a timeline, like specific to a certain project. But maybe it is just supposed to be overall, it would support these 7 performances and these are the performances. But otherwise, I thought it was really interesting, and the acts that they're bringing in and giving the Soo an opportunity to listen to, while at the same time giving an opportunity to people from the Soo to perform. And so a lot of that like ended up ranking high on the rubric, but that was the one comment I had about the application.
Thanks, Nyla. Brenna?
So I agree with everyone on their points and about how great this is. I also wrote down, can this help with the funding necessary to pick up shows as they become available? So there were emails attached, and in their correspondences about taking on shows, they have to take them on a per show basis because they're not able to pick up the entire thing as they come available that far ahead. And I'm not sure if this would contribute to that or what's necessary even to be able to book far ahead like they would hope. So they have to work like book on a one-off basis. So some clarification in that matter would be awesome, because they've had to respond to some people who would want to come here and haven't had the accommodate or the, I guess, the timing and everything necessary to put them up. So it seems like they just need to build a little bit bigger so that they can offer a lot more. And yeah, I think it's a great application overall.
Thanks, Brenna. I see Lee's hand, but from the so I'll come to you shortly. I just wanted to mention that I've heard a number of questions from the members. And so I wonder if this is something that, if there are specific items that we might want to ask Alicia to go back to the applicant for clarification, such as on the point that you raised, Brenna, or on the, if there are some more specific questions. It's also, you know, if you just feel like there is a lack of clarity, you know, we can't really go back and say, hey, can you rewrite this? But if there are specific questions, we can certainly go back to the applicant with those. Alicia, did you want to chime in on that before I go back to Lee?
Nope, just so much as I'm making notes and I'm planning to reach out on what Brenda's just raised. Excuse me, Brenda's just raised.
Thanks. Thanks, Alicia. Lee?
Yeah, I guess my question would kind of come to, maybe it's a you question, maybe it's a committee discussion. After hearing everyone's comments, it seems to be this applicant has applied maybe more for an operating grant. It doesn't seem to be project specific from what I can understand. So I don't know if there's consideration that we can move them around or yeah, and I guess that I've kind of pieced together what everyone said, and it seems to be more of the need, from my understanding. I guess just some clarity on specifically in the application, it mentions a venue rental. Like it seems to be like the cost for one show, except their costs are actually in the positive for every single show in the past. So I guess that's where I'm trying to understand where this funding need is from. And if it's for a bankroll to essentially be able to book musicians in advance, that would be amazing to know as well, just to try and get that clarity. Because if it's operating, well, maybe we can view it within that stream, and that would clarify that need. Or if it's a barrier to actually booking, that would be beneficial as well.
That's a really good question. I think that that might also clarify the discrepancy between the requested amount and the eligible amount as well.
Okay, I will-
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia. All right. If there's no further comment on this application, we'll move on to item 3, which is the Sue Blue Society. Nyla Moss has declared a conflict, so we will be moving her shortly into a different virtual room. So please be please hang in there and come back when we're done. Oh, she's gone. Okay.
I
So,
put her away. I'm so sorry.
no worries. That's
Happened
good.
to me.
That's good. Okay, so Sue Blue Society has applied for a community events grant with a total request of $2,999. The Sue Blue Society is an incorporated not-for-profit group of blues fans and musicians who work to keep blues happening in and around the Northern Ontario city of Sault Ste. Marie. They do their best to promote all blues performances that happen in or near the Soo, and also attempt to host 3 to 4 of their own featured events each year. They also endeavor to present or support at least one blues music band fundraiser in each calendar year, hiring local musicians to be presented at the fundraiser. Every year, they attempt to recognize one of the local blues musicians at one of their featured presentations with the Dedicated to the Blues Award for their personal contributions in assisting the Sue Blue Society with their musical presentations. Activities slated to take place are between May 2nd, 2024 to February 28th, 2025. So the event season is planned to include 6 separate events, including Miss Emily in May, a Rotary Fest in July, Little Magic Sam Band in October, Blues for Food event in December, the secondary fundraiser partnered with the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce in December, and Bon Sioux 2025 in February. Age demographics include 0 to 75 plus years of age, with approximately 250 to 500 people estimated to view these events. The applicant cites that activities are enacted to support the events by 50 or more volunteers. So I believe it is Brenna's turn.
Okay. I thought this application was great. It really showed that they had like plans for specific events, that the Clerk Park running that, and like a clear request to cover artist fees and pay some artists who have been volunteering their time to contribute to those events. So I thought that being very clear was really something that I endorse fully. I thought it was a good application.
Thanks, Brenna. Larry?
Well, I've already given you my thoughts, but I will make this. I just was looking at the financial side of things. They showed their expenses and incomes for 2023 up to March 2024, and they lost money on 4 out of 7 events. So putting on shows in the city is a very risky business.
Thanks, Larry. Rebecca?
Thanks. I think that there seemed to be a strong history of project completion, a strong history in the community, defined achievements, a clear vision for what they intended. Again, I was sometimes finding it rather vague about their work plan. I think that was really the only portion that brought some of my scores down a bit, but overall, I thought it was a very strong application.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. And Lee, final word to you.
Yes, overall, I thought it was also a strong application. I love that they are working with multiple nonprofits. They're doing multiple charity events. They're working with various partners, various musicians. They're paying people appropriately. They have a crew of volunteers. I mean, all of this screams community, culture, arts. So I was really impressed with that. I did see a clear need from their application in order to pay their artists, but it's also clear from their application that I think they work with other community partners to get in-kind help as well. My only criticism, I thought it overall was a very strong application and a great thing that they do for the community. I don't see a lot of indication for promotion and marketing in the application. I would love to see them get some help with that. That was my only little criticism that I kind of made a note of, that if they had allocated some fund for that or some money for that, it would probably help in the long run with that cash flow as well for their events.
Thank you very much. Any other final comments or score changes? Seeing none, we will invite Nyla back into the conversation and we'll proceed with item number 5. Welcome back, Nyla. Oh, sorry.
Same thing.
Oh, I said item number 5. I mean item number 4, which is Living Out Loud. This is a cultural diversity grant requesting $4,010.37. Jessa Nisbet is a 42-year-old woman multidisciplinary artist of transgender expression with a primary focus on performing and media arts. For her live music shows, she incorporates sounds that represent their past and present in Sault Ste. Marie. For 2023, she produced a track which sampled the locally iconic Station Mall's 90s jingle, which was played for audience to rave reviews. For media arts, she constructed a computer-controlled light pyramid featuring 3 panels of art. And for visual art, she created a piece which represents their feeling of living as a transgender person in Sault Ste. Marie. Since 2021, she has been an organizer of the Northern Vibe Festival, which takes place 45 minutes outside Sault Ste. Marie. Her work consists of the performance of carefully crafted musical experience using modern computer-controlled hardware. She weaves together sounds from different genres using samples, songs, and music that she's produced herself and is part of the Sioux-based Disco Magic Collective and part of the Toronto-based Roots Radio Collective. On the visual art side, she's contributed works to the Arc Vélcomo's Winter Festival of Art and has displayed work represents transgender perspectives as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. For the Northern Vibe Festival and other events, she has created computer-controlled artistic lighting installations and has a lengthy list of events completed in 2023. The application notes that Sault Ste. Marie has a well-represented LGBTQIA+ community, however, lacks an appropriate amount of social events to congregate and feel supported. The idea behind Living Out Loud, the project for which the application is submitted, is to host social dance and community nights with a focus on LGBTQIA+ and allied communities. The plan is to make these events available with as low of a barrier to entry as possible, keeping costs low, means not renting equipment on a regular basis. And as part of hosting these events, the applicant will be providing their own sound system, lighting, performance equipment, and most important, her time for free. She also plans to make available free of charge space at these events for LGBTQIA+ vendors to offer their products and have space for organizations to provide outreach information. Successful implementation of Living Out Loud with Angela Lazara will mean ongoing social events occurring roughly every second month. The schedule would run June, August, October, December for 2024. Success will be measured by community attendance, and although attendance will be free, attendees will need to get free tickets, and thus engagement can be measured via the ticket portal. Additionally, feedback will be sought at the events, and if the events are successful, she'd like to roll them into the Sioux Pride and their Pride Fest schedule. Initial discussions have been had with the chair of Sioux Pride. So next, oh dear, I have lost track of who's going. I think it's Lee's turn to start us off.
Thanks, Sean. Overall, I thought this was a great program. This Living Out Loud. I love that it interacts with the LGBTQ2SI plus community. I think that that's a major kind of gap that the city is relying on the Cultural Vitality Committee to kind of fill for the time being, because there's no specific allocated funding for that marginalized group. I thought for the amount that she does in kind, I wish she kind of showed that in the application. I love that she qualified it earlier on in the application, but I wish I'd seen that in kind in the financials. It seems like the funding specifically is just allocated to really get that multimedia player, from my understanding, so that these events can occur. Everything else she's kind of looking after. So I thought that was great, but the one worry that kind of comes with that is, well, if we only give her partial funding, will this happen then? So that's kind of my only like contrary point on this. But overall, yeah, I gave it fairly high scores across the board.
Oh, sorry, Sean, I think you're on mute there.
Oh, well, that explains it. Sorry, next I have Rebecca.
And so I found this project application did describe a distinctive and interesting intended activity. Based on her resume, they certainly seem to have the skills, knowledge, and process to realize this project, along with a lot of commitment to what they're hoping to achieve. There was a question I had if indeed the funding is specifically for the multimedia player. I guess the question I had was there was some description of requesting that various venues donate their venue space. I'm pretty sure I saw that somewhere in there. So I was just curious to see. That was my only question of like what the intention or plan was for that. It would have been interesting to see that in the grant application itself. Otherwise, I thought it was very clear and compelling. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Next, Larry.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting application and business, but I think certainly has the skills to carry it off. I wonder a bit about the impact on Sault Ste. Marie. And I think we are being asked to fund the multimedia player because the amount she's asking for is to the penny what the multimedia player costs. My one question is, and I think it was a weakness, she has her costs, her expenses listed. By the way, there's $1,600 to rent a venue. From other applications, it looks like it costs $1,500 to rent the loft. So that's reasonable. But what happens? I think one of our colleagues has already brought attention to it. If she doesn't, if she doesn't get the full grant, is she going to go on? What's she going to do? Because she doesn't talk about the income side, the revenue side. You would project it. Are you going to sell tickets or something at the door? You're going to have a draw that will make you some money, a 50-50 draw or something. Are you going to be applying for grants at the Ontario Arts Council or Heritage Canada? There's none of that. And I thought that was a weakness. She's really looking to us.
Thanks, Larry. Alicia.
just a clarifying point, just specifically about ticket sales is that they're not planning to be sold. Essentially, this would be a barrier-free or low entry availability. Perhaps there'll be donations, maybe, but that's maybe I'm extrapolating too much. Sorry about that. But ultimately, that wasn't in the application specifically, like you said.
I'm just giving examples. I'm not, I can think up more examples.
Thanks, Larry. Next, I think I have Nyla.
Yeah, I found the application really straightforward. I also drew the conclusion just from the amount asked matching the multimedia player that the request was for the multimedia player specifically. I really appreciated that there was still a measurement of success there, even though the tickets are free. Sometimes it's hard to measure, but there's a plan to track the success overall. And I would think from event to see what works or what can be improved on, which I appreciated. The part about partners being relevant, I know she said it was pending, but reaching out to Sue Pride and seeking connections there to grow, I thought was a strong point. I guess it's part of the application I'm drawn to, but I thought there was a really clear plan, like order of events. It was detailed and you could see how everything was lining up. Like if month 1, I'm doing this, and month 2, I'm having an event, then month 4, I'm doing this, and month 5, I'm having an event, and you could see kind of the flow of how things were going to go throughout the entirety of the project. And although I would agree that like the budget was not sparse, because I think it's just a smaller event compared to some of the ones that we've already even like reviewed today that have multiple different things going on. So the budget is more complicated and more dense. I really appreciated that every line item, though there be few, matched kind of like an invoice or a screenshot at the end. So I thought the attachments were very relevant. We could see the venue booking was either $400 for a half day, at least the quote she got, or $800 for a day. So I don't know if that was translating to 4 half-day events or 2 full-day events, but I think that's where the 1,600 came from. And then the 2 other screenshots that were provided. So I thought, not a super complicated, but straightforward application that was well put together and had good backup on all those technical details.
Thanks very much, Nyla. And Brenna.
So I really liked this application. I love that this person has been immersed in this environment and they've been doing it for free. So from my perspective, I see it as giving an artist their paintbrush and the amount that can come back from that, whether it's busking, whether it's at the Sugar Shack or Terran Taurus or at a center somewhere else. It doesn't have to be at a bar or huge venue. The impact of that community space will be huge. So I would ask if they would if there's a multimedia player that will not if they can still make this affordable in a different style or a different type. I know Invoice is giving the roundabouts, but how much leeway do they have? And yeah, other than that, I think a performer, a presenter, a musician, an artist, I think it's great to be able to give them a paintbrush, and let them do their thing.
Thanks, Brenna. One point I should make also, just it was raised in relation to this application, but it's relevant to all the applications. In the event that we can't fully fund an applicant, but we give them a partial funding, which is most cases that we offer funding, Alicia still does reach out to the applicant to see if they can still do something relevant or comparable with the amount that's awarded. They do have the opportunity to decline the funding if it's just not viable, at which point, if the funding is declined, then it goes back into the pot. We haven't had that happen yet. Generally, community groups have and applicants have been able to either scale back or find other sources or make it work somehow. But of course, we do know there's a cost to not being able to fully fund these projects, to be sure. So just as a matter of clarification, because I know some folks might not be familiar with that. I see Larry's hand, but I'm going to go to Alicia first because she's great at correcting me on points of order.
This is all accurate, but just to say that in my experience in talking with applicants, funding hasn't been turned down. They're willing to work with what's provided. And of course, we wish we could always provide full funding, but they're typically very happy to hear from us in any event.
Thanks, Alicia. Larry.
Now, there's a follow-up report at the end when the event is done, isn't there?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
so we know how the money was used, or whether it was successful and so on.
That's right. And if there was any concern from staff's perspective about the relevance of the use of the funds, then that would come back to the committee. But so far, all of those funds have been used for the assigned purposes. And I guess for the public's awareness as well, these are all basically any correspondence with the city is accessible through an access to, it's not, is it the Freedom of Information Request? It's a different acronym, but it's the same principle. Larry?
Yeah, I just follow up to the reporting in the end. I don't think we get a summary of those end reports, do we?
We haven't, but I'll defer to Alicia on that.
It'd be nice.
So in past years, applicants will often submit them or have submitted them with their applications. That made this process much more convoluted to include that extra paperwork, especially because the number of applicants within each round weren't necessarily repeat applicants. So it made it confusing for members. And again, the process was not entirely clear. So I am keeping track of those reports on this end. I have a running roster of what's outstanding and what's due and essentially when. And basically, I'm happy to provide that information at any point. But ultimately, we haven't included as part of the agenda package because, again, it doesn't really affect this so much as it's been submitted, and it's an administrative piece on the back end.
Yeah, and related to that, I would add applicants aren't eligible if they have an outstanding post-grant report. Larry?
Just as a follow-up, the second part to my follow-up question, I'm quite sure that this applicant can rent a piece of equipment for an iota, but of course she'd like to own one, and then you don't have that cost. It helps you into the future, eh? So I understand that. I don't see anything wrong with it. I wouldn't expect she'd deny the money.
Thanks very much. All right, any other comments on or questions or changes to scores on this application? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, T with D. This is also a cultural diversity grant application requesting $11,918. Deanna Naviu is a multi-talented individual from Matagami First Nation, known for her roles as an Indigenous advocate, entrepreneur, and artist. With over 30 years of dedication to promoting Indigenous rights, Deanna has bridged cultural gaps and fostered understanding. As a gifted artist, she creatively expresses Indigenous perspectives and cultural heritage, using her artwork as a means to raise awareness and spark dialogue. Recently, she launched the Indigenous podcast Tea with D, engaging in insightful conversation about various Indigenous topics, showcasing her passion for dialogue and education. Deanna's commitment to community service is evident in her role as an Indigenous cultural resource peer helper. Through volunteering, she empowers her community and contributes to the preservation of cultural resilience. Her unique combination of activism, entrepreneurship, and artistic expression has made Deanna a remarkable individual, inspiring others to champion Indigenous rights and celebrate cultural heritage. Deanna's artwork primarily focuses on expressing Indigenous perspectives and cultural heritage through her art in various mediums. She aims to raise awareness about Indigenous issues, spark dialogue, and celebrate the rich traditions of Indigenous communities. Pieces often convey themes such as identity, resilience, connection to the land, and the ongoing struggle for Indigenous rights and recognition. By capturing the essence of Indigenous experiences, Deanna's artwork serves as a powerful medium for storytelling and cultural expression. Activities would run from June 2024 to June 2025, with age demographics including 0 to 59, with an estimated audience of over 2,500, requiring 1 to 10 participants supporting the project. And I believe Brenna is our first commenter.
So I found this application to be super strong. I thought the plan was really good idea. It's something that we need in our community. We need these voices to be lifted and to be recording oral histories in the way that oral histories are told. And I think that a podcast is a great avenue for doing so. And I think it's awesome for our community to be involved in more of that knowledge sharing and knowledge keeping. I would say that when I was looking over the budgets, I did think the bear caves were a bit pricey in terms of soundproofing. I'm not sure what Deanna is using so far, how big this space is. If you're in like a giant area, I can understand if there's a need for that. But I think there may be other more feasible ways to start that up. It's only the bear caves that I thought were a little bit, there might be a substitute that can work, but the program overall and the plan and the background as a peer worker and yeah, I think it looks like a really successful program, and I thought the application was great.
Oh, sorry.
You're
I was
muted, but
muted.
I think
Yeah,
I saw you say Nyla.
yeah, I
So I'm
did.
just gonna jump in.
Yeah.
I also thought this was a really strong application. I loved how unique it was. I thought it was a really interesting concept. This, like as you touched on, is my first intake. And I wasn't, some things, not that I was expecting, but I just wasn't expecting to see like a podcast come up. And when I read it, I thought that was really interesting. And I kind of immediately started thinking how valuable it would have to be to have that information locally recorded, accessible, and then how someone, you could access it from anywhere, even if you're not in the Soo, and learn about like our, like locally what she'd have to say, and the people, like the guests that she's listed and has kind of said she'd approach in the future, I thought were really interesting. Whether it's someone who doesn't have a tie to the Soo but is interested in learning more, or someone who's left the Soo and wants to make that connection with their history, or like the future as well. I think we've seen, I feel like the Soo Museum's been really successful with their podcast, in that it's kind of been an overall like part of kind of like a direction that the museum's going, and to see it work already locally, I think this would be such like a nice like compliment to have. I also would say that my largest kind of like was the price of the unit. That being said, like proprietary and one-off units, things like that do tend to be really expensive because they're not like a consumer product that people are buying like hundreds a day. I looked it up because I just had more questions and wanted to see what else was out there. And I did notice that on their website under mission for the Bear Cave Silent Booths was to support and mentor Indigenous youth on and off reserves to start their own business and thrive. So I was wondering if maybe they could, I'm sure they're great booths, and like anyone obviously could buy the booth, but I was wondering if maybe it was also being seen as like a partnership and kind of like giving back to another Indigenous run business. I Googled it right away because I don't know how much silent booths cost. They are very comparable. I think it's just an expensive item. But I also kind of saw that partnership there. She doesn't state it in the application, so I didn't want to weigh it too much in how I felt, but I like upon doing that research, I thought, oh, maybe this was like a specific request to also give back to, not give back, but to support a business that's supporting Indigenous youth as well. But I thought it was really interesting. The only other thing I would have liked to see would be maybe a more specific goal of these are coming out every 2 months or coming out every month or every 2 weeks. But I just made a note that I thought maybe it was just in an effort to not like represent something that didn't end up being accurate, because part of her timeline is actually planning and development. So it might just be that she's not at that stage yet, but it would have been interesting to see what her goal is, at least, of like how frequently, ultimately, whether it's like within this or in the future, that she'd want these to be going out. But I found the whole application very compelling. It's really long, sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you, Nyla. Larry.
I thought it was an interesting application. I'm a real fan of podcasts. And I think this one is really appropriate, given that the city of Sault Ste. Marie is abutted by two, mature reserves and two First Nations. In fact, it's probably a bit of an act of reconciliation. I'd go that far. So I think it's important. And I think it's, but we're being asked to fund the whole thing, all of their expenses. And I get a little itchy when I see that. I don't think we should be the only egg in the basket. And I thought that was a weakness. I don't know, there's no explanation about, you can't sell tickets here, but you could go to the Ontario Arts Council, or, there are various other ways of seeking funding. And I thought that was a weakness. And I'm not sure you need a sound booth. It would be nice. But I listen to a lot of podcasts where they're done in auditoria, and they're done all sorts of situations in people's living rooms and so on. So anyway, those are my iffiness comments.
Thanks, Larry. Next, I have Rebecca.
In terms of community impact, I scored this application very high. I was very impressed with the way it was written. I was impressed with the detailed month-by-month projections of the projects and activities. Some questions I had, like I quickly realized how little I know about podcast management and how little I know about sound technology. I know nothing. So, but I guess I would be interested to know what the thought process was towards the specific item that was chosen. The phone booth, I wrote down phone booth, but I doubt that's what it's actually called. But that particular item, I'd be interested in just knowing more about it and like what the thought process was. Something also that was mentioned was at the beginning of the application, there was an intention to utilize grant funding for professional development opportunities. But then as far as I recall, it wasn't discussed any further. So I was interested to know a little bit more about that. That was a question I had. And also, if there was a plan for compensation of guests or artists, I don't recall seeing those described in the work plan, but I may have missed it. Overall, I was very impressed by the application. Thought it was very strong, and I scored it rather high. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I see Alicia writing furiously. So I think that means she's going to follow up with those questions.
I will. Thank you.
Lee.
Yeah, to echo Rebecca, the lack of artist and guest fees was a little bit was a question that I had as well as any marketing funding. I didn't see any of that on the project sheet either. You'd need a lot of promotion to get podcasts off the ground. I definitely appreciated that she put the podcast booth in the application. I interpreted that as a go big or go home kind of like a grandiose approach to it. Like, this is the Cadillac, like, I'll take your Subaru, please. So I could definitely see this still being very successful even without any other revenue sources that I could see, with possibly just some rentals, or more modest sound equipment, without the booth alternative. And the benefit of that is you can do A/B testing, you could be more mobile. If she's interviewing elders, the mobility might be something that she has to consider. So I thought overall this was a great application, and that's how I interpreted the fancy sound booth side of it. But I think it has great potential impact, and I would really like to see this come to fruition.
Thanks, Lee. And any other final comments, questions, or changes to scores based on discussion? Larry.
If you want to see how sophisticated a podcast can be, listen to Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin. You'll see how many people are involved in the production end of it, and and so on, and the variety of ways and places that the interviews are conducted. It's a powerful tool if it's used right.
Thanks, Larry. Brenna.
I will definitely be raising my viability score if there's an adjustment to the soundproofing plan. Unless or at least I'd like to hear back, because like what Nyla said, if it's a partnership and you're using like each other for promotional aspects or kind of something like that, then that might be what I'm missing. And if I'm missing that angle, then yeah, that it totally makes sense. Otherwise, I would probably raise my viability score if that were adjusted.
Thanks for that note, Brenna. All right, any other comments, questions, or changes? Seeing none, we will move on to our final application for the evening. And I know Lee has declared a conflict in relation to this one, so we will place you into the other virtual room momentarily.
I just remind you, Lee, please stay on the line as in the waiting room, and we'll bring you back in afterwards. And she's gone.
Great. So the club has applied for a cultural diversity grant of $12,550. Their vision is to support the diversity and vibrancy of the community by hosting inclusive and brave/safe spaces for connection, education, celebration, and wellness. They aim to foster a community where all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, feel valued, respected, and empowered. The activities would take place from June 1st, 2024 to July 15th, 2024 at the Queen Street Club location, Point de Chene and Roberta Bondar Pavilion Parks, or the Downtown Plaza. So they've identified 4 different events over the course of this period, including a beach day and canoeing with Thrive Tours, dance class and showcase with local artists and performers, paint night with Lucia LaFord, and a lip sync battle. Overall, each activity contributes to the project's goals of fostering community pride, solidarity, and wellness by providing inclusive and engaging experiences that celebrate diversity and promote connection. The age demographics range from 0 to 75 plus years of age, and events will range to include 1 to 250 people each, with 11 to 15 participants needed to support the activities. And so the first person I have commenting on this application, I believe, is Rebecca.
Thanks. I thought this was a very strong application. I appreciated the careful work plan. I felt leaving the application that I did understand how the funds would be used in a very structured way. I thought there's a lot of artistic and cultural merit to the plan, and it has the potential to have excellent community impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Larry is next.
Yeah, I thought this was a very interesting and not just culturally or artistically important project, but socially. You know, the LGB, etc. group have fought so hard for so long to gain recognition within the community, and they've done that. But now they need means to be able to socialize you know, as a group. They're still behind the 8 ball. I don't say that the first battle's over either, it appears, but I think it's important for that reason. And I like this one because it was broad, it was recreational, it was educational. And I think, just trying to, I thought I made a note of it. I think if this was the application that said that their target audience, yeah, this was the one where the LGBTQ, etc. Community, but they're allies too. And I think allies are really important. So I just think this is a very important. But the one thing I didn't like, one thing, I don't think they have reached out for funding anywhere else.
Thanks, Larry. Next, I have Nyla.
I ranked this application high. I think like in the three main areas, the organizational and financial health, I thought there was a really strong history of project success. Looking back from just like being in the Sioux and seeing what's been done by the club, but then they did a very thorough job of outlining what they've done in the past as well. I learned a lot about some of the different initiatives that they've had success with. So I was really grateful to see that summarized so clearly. I also like I assume maybe this was just clicked wrong. I like the project milestones and activities were like well thought out in the list. They were mostly all checked for month 1, which I was a little surprised by. And I was wondering if that was maybe not accurate, because it seems like they've made connections with some of these people, but it says like secure venues, secure artists for month 1, but they kind of already seem to have a plan of what they're doing. So I just kind of looked past that because I thought 1 month to do all of these things was maybe tight, but I don't think that is what's happening just based off what they already know about what they want to do. I like the partnerships that were there, specifically working with Thrive Tours to do something. It seemed like they were leveraging a lot of people and just opportunities we already have in our community, beautiful waterfront, Thrive Tours, things like that. Obviously, I feel I ranked 5. I can't find the thing on the rubric for speaking to an underrepresented group. I think that aligns really well with the direction we've been given in the ACAP guidelines as was considered an underrepresented group. And so I just ranked really high. I thought it was a strong application. And I definitely agree with Larry, seeing how it's also reaching out to allies and kind of making it a safe space for everyone, and how they want it to be also for our community. So I thought this was a really strong, well thought out application. And I really appreciated having, I know not everyone has them, but the audited financial statements and just like the depth that they went into their financials. It was, the transparency was really appreciated. You know, it took a while to get through it. It was really clear.
Thanks, Nyla. And last word to Brenna.
So I agree with everyone's comments so far. I thought it was a really important project. So I do see the idea of like making Pride Month a thing, and obviously all the partnerships and things. I have to echo what Nyla said. The partnerships with Thrive is awesome. Going to Point of Shane, that's cool. dance class and showcase, and it's all about like engaging the people that they have with them. So I really enjoy the idea of just getting people together and creating that kind of environment and trying to make a little bit more visibility throughout June, so that everyone knows what's going on. But yeah, so
Thank-
great application.
Thanks, Brenna. Any other comments, questions, or changes to scores based on the discussion? Seeing none, we will invite Lee back into the conversation and we will do our adjournment for the day and pick this up once we've all had the chance to score the next 6 applications. Welcome back, Lee. So we have reached the end of the discussion of the applications that we were prepared to discuss today. So we're going to adjourn. I guess before asking for a motion, I'm going to check in with Alicia to see if there's any final words or considerations before we do that.
No, just if next on our books is we have an upcoming meeting on May 13th. And that's it for now. So I'll be sending out another invitation for the next round of review beyond that as well in the coming weeks.
Great. Okay, well, hey, we are 20 minutes early. I'd like a motion. Is there a mover to adjourn? Moved by Brenna, seconded by Larry. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Great. And motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for a thorough, engaging, and expeditious conversation about these applications. We'll see you all on the 13th.
Bye.
You.
Thank
Night.
you.